All right, let's work on some literal equations. We're solving each of these problems right here, 1 through 6, for y. And so let's get started. Here we got two sides of the equation. Our y is right here. We're going to start by adding 9x. And we get 3y equals 9x plus 24. And then we're going to divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. I feel like at this point I should kind of tell you that, yes, if you divide by 3 a little differently, then it will look a little different, but the result should end up looking like this, that you get y equals 3x plus 8. So let me jump over here and show you kind of what I mean by if you had done it differently. And if you've watched, me do some of this stuff before, then you kind of already know where I'm going with this. And that you did this, you divided the entire side. I mean, that's what we did here, but that's also what's happening here, right? You still get y equals, and then these two divide, but also these two divide. And like I said, you would still get 3x plus 8. Let's jump over to number 2, and I'll explain why I recommend you subtract by 10 first. I think most of you are agreeing that we should subtract 10 first, but here's why. The order of operations, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, PEMDAS says we start here when we are simplifying and we go this direction right here, yeah? If we are ready to solve, then now we start here and go this direction. We solve by doing the opposite. So what happens is add and subtract are the first two we look into, add and subtract. And then after that, we consider multiply and divide. And then really, just for right now, we're not really going to be doing much with those. And for now, don't worry about it. In fact, for a long time, we're not really going to worry about that. So adding and subtracting, oh, check it out. There is adding and subtracting happening over here, and that's why I dealt with that first. We have negative 2y equals, oh, check that out. That's just 36. So this one, that's kind of funny. While this was a literal equation in the sense that we had multiple variables, this one was just an equation, and you just solve it by doing the normal stuff. So you got y equals negative 18. Okay, that's nice. Now we have a little bit more of a literal equation again. We want to solve for y. And so on this side with the y, we want to get things away from. What's happening to that y? It's being multiplied by 4, but it also has this 9. And I say this 9 because it's kind of, this is subtracting from the 9. But anyway, what we're going to do is to get rid of the 9, we're going to do the opposite to it. So I'm going to subtract 9, and I get 3x minus 4 equals negative 4y. And then I'm going to divide by negative 4y, well, because we're done with that, and there's no other adding or subtracting happening over here, so it's on to multiplying and dividing. So divide by negative 4, and your answer ends up being y equals negative 3/4 x plus 1. Because that negative 4 divides that, and it divides that, yeah? Yeah. Number 4, we're solving for y. I notice I have x's here and here, but the y is all I really care about. So what I'm going to do is add 5x so that I move things away from the y. So I have 7y equals 13x plus 7. I divide by 7, and I get that y equals 13x over 7 plus 1. Another way you could have written this is 13/7 x plus 1. This is the same thing as this. Number 5, we want y. What's happening to y? He's multiplying, and he's got some adding happening to him. So I'm going to subtract 3, and I get 1/5 y equals 2x plus 1. I'm going to multiply both sides by 5. You could have divided by 1/5. That just feels yucky to me. So this cancels that. Why does it cancel that? Because if you were to multiply straight across 5 times 1 is 5, 1 times 5 is 5, and 5 divided by 5 is 1. Now we're going to distribute this 5 here to get 10x plus 5. Number 6. Pretty much the same as the last one. I'm going to subtract 10. Subtract 10. I have negative 1/3 y equals negative 6 plus 6x. I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 3. And I get that y equals 18 minus 18x. If you had chosen to write it like this, y equals negative 18x plus 18, that's the same thing as that, and you would be doing just fine. Now we're getting a little bit more complicated because, not because we're solving for x, but because now these guys both have an x. So if you watch the notes, I basically said we are going to have to factor. And what is factoring? Well, it's basically dividing. I'm going to put dividing in quotation marks. It's dividing. Or if you want to think of it another way, it's the opposite of distributing. And if you're like, wait, isn't distributing just multiplying? And yeah, it is. So really, factoring is dividing, and isn't dividing the opposite of multiplying? Isn't factoring the opposite of distributing? So if this, I realize that just reading this is not teaching you what to do, so I'm going to do that now. But here's my point. If I want to get x, well then, okay, maybe I would divide by 4, and then that would cancel there, but then that would not cancel. I would have 5/4 xy, and that's not exactly helpful, right? So this is where you recognize that this term has x as a factor, and this term has x as a factor. And if you're like, wait a second, factor like that, here's where there's like a factor can be used as a noun and as a verb, and now we're getting a little crazy, right? If I were to ask you what are the factors of 6, you would say it's 2 and 3. 2 and 3 are the factors of 6. So what are the factors of 4x? 4 and x. What are the factors of 5xy? 5x and y, okay? So this side, every term has x as a factor. And so I'm going to factor that out. I'm going to take out that factor. And what's left behind is a 4, because now that x is gone. Actually, it's not gone. It moved right there, yeah? And then over here, the x is going to be gone again, and it leaves me with 5y, okay? And now we're still wanting to get x by itself. X is multiplying this whole thing, so we're going to divide by that whole thing. And we end up getting that x equals g over 4 plus 5y. Solving for x, the same thing is going to happen this time. This term has an x, this term has an x. They both have that x in common. Those are quotation marks, so I'm like saying these terms have x in common. So I'm going to factor out that common term. And what's going to be left over is 4a minus 9. And then that w is still just over here. Since we're solving for x, we're going to divide by 4a minus 9. And now our answer is x equals w over 4a minus 9. Solving for x. This guy has an x, this guy has an x, but oh no, that guy does not have an x. So that doesn't mean you have to freak out. That just means we're going to subtract 2 first. So on the left, we have z minus 2 equals 6x plus px. Now that guy's got an x, that guy has an x. We're going to factor out the x, and we have 6 plus p right there. And the left side is still z minus 2. Now we're going to divide by 6 plus p. 6 plus p. That cancels the whole thing. And our answer is just x equals z minus 2 over 6 plus p. Maybe that's a little simpler than you thought it was going to be. And no, we don't have to reduce or try and simplify any further, because z is being divided by this whole thing. Negative 2 is being divided by this whole thing. And none of that simplifies. Next, solving for x again. Very similar to the last one. This 10 does not have an x. So let's move the 10 away. And really, if you think of it like this, think of it as a simpler problem. Like back up here, where we just said, hey, oh look, that's what we want. Let's move the things away from it, right? Imagine that there was this, but this had a 10x. Okay, we'll just subtract 10x, right? No big deal. So back down here, we have t minus 10 equals 7x minus qx. We're going to factor out an x here, and that will give us 7 minus q equals t minus 10. We're going to divide by 7 minus q, divide by 7 minus q, and our answer is x equals t minus 10 over 7 minus q. 11, solving for x. This is pretty straightforward. Both of these terms have an x, so we're going to factor it out. A minus b equals k. Divide by a minus b, divide by a minus b. X equals k over a minus b. We got p equals qxrx plus s. I like it. We have no numbers here, not really. Subtract s. We have p minus s equals qx plus rx. Factor out the x to get q plus r. And then on this side, we still have p minus s. Divide by q plus r, divide by q plus r. That's gone. We're left with x equals p minus s over q. That's an ugly q plus r. Still solving for x, by the way. Subtract 11. Factor out x. Divide by negative 4 minus 3j, and you get x equals w minus 11 over negative 4 minus 3j. I'm going to add 8. I'm going to factor out x. And I should slow down for a second to just point out that x is by itself, right? And in fact, I probably should have pointed that out way back over here. When you factor, one of the things that we talk about when we factor is you should be able to do the opposite of factoring, which is distributing. And you should get the original thing when you distribute. So right here, for example, when we multiply x to 4, we get 4x. When we multiply x to 5y, we get 5xy, right? So over here, if you're going, wait a second, where did 1 come from? We are dividing this x by x. X divided by x is 1. And then if we were to then distribute that x back to it, if we multiply 1 by x, well, we definitely get x, right? Okay, so we're going to divide by 1 plus 3v. So So somebody made an error. We got to find it. So we have k equals ax plus bx plus d, and they factored out an x from this entire side. Well, they can't have done that because this guy doesn't have an x. So that's the error. Now let's fix it. We're going to subtract d from both sides. And then we are going to, we're going to factor out the x. Then we're going to divide both sides by a plus b. So k minus d equals, k minus d over a plus b equals x. That is what it should look like. Solve for the indicated variable. All right, so this is the simple interest formula. You might not care about that right now, but it is, in fact, the simple interest formula. And T would stand for time. Again, you might not care about that, but that's what we're doing. So guess what? All you're going to do is divide by PR. And if you're like, whoa, I can't divide by PR. What if you had like 6x equals 12? Can you divide by 6? Yeah, you could. What if I'd said divide by 2 times 3? That's the same thing as 6. So you can divide by two numbers being multiplied together because you do it all the time. You just are maybe not thinking about it. So I over PR is what T is. Volume of a box, length times width times height. Let's get W by itself. Okay, we're going to divide by length and height. So W equals the volume divided by the length times the height. And then this is not one that I can think of off the top of my head, but we're supposed to solve for B. Well, now we have to do a little bit of simplifying before. Well, actually, no, we don't have to do any simplifying. I'm going to multiply this whole thing by 2 and that whole thing by 2. So guess what? My half and my 2 cancel. I have 2s equals a plus b plus c. I'm going to do this 2 steps in 1 step. 2s minus a minus c. That is what b equals.